How long do you think that took? 20 seconds? Maybe 25? It took at least 15, right? Well, even though it didn't feel like it, I assure you, that took less than 10 seconds. Crazy, huh? The concept of time is pretty strange to begin with. Although many see time as a constant tick on a clock, I believe that 10-second moo proves that time is much more flexible than that. Much like Play-Doh, our own perceptions can stretch, squish, and shape time. Everyone in this chapel is familiar with the sensation of time bending. I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets frustrated at advertisers when they play a 30-second unskippable ad before my YouTube videos. Even though the little countdown on the corner confirms that the ad only lasts 30 seconds, we stretch that time to feel like we're watching a full feature film. This phenomenon happens all the time. It happens when you're waiting at the dentist's office or sitting through a particularly dull lecture. We refer to some books and movies as being slow, even though they take similar amounts of time as other books or movies of similar length. When an activity is particularly boring, we pay more attention to the passage of time, and we resort to making it last longer. We begin to count down the hours, the minutes, the seconds left until we can move on with our life and go back to living in regular speed. Many people strive to live a longer life, and with this ability, that goal is easily obtainable. Just go to the DMV and take a seat. I swear you'll live forever. Although a lifetime at the DMV seems like the last thing you would want to do, many people live out their lives in this very way, just waiting. People spend their lives in a miserable slow motion, waiting to arrive at a state of happiness. I sure did that for the first 2 years of high school. During these years, nothing on my to-do list seemed to be activities I truly enjoyed. I would spend hours on end trying to stylize my history presentation to guarantee me a perfect score. I would triple-check my math homework with different people to be sure I made no careless mistakes. I would even write multiple versions of English short answers to have the opportunity to choose responses that would yield the best result. Although I did well academically these 2 years, most of my time was spent in a state of worry and stress. I had convinced myself that if I maintained this lifestyle for the rest of high school, I would have time to do what I enjoy eventually in the college of my choice. Time stretched to make these 2 years long and unpleasant. I made little time for friends and family and resorted to living behind the stacks of assignments on my desk. Certain that the years of suffering would one day pay off with happiness, I fell into a repetitive cycle of the same grueling motions. I believed that a perfect report card would be the fuel that would finally allow me to arrive at a state of happiness. But I've learned that this is not the case. Seeing happiness as my destination was my first mistake. In our society, we're engraved to see the world in this very way. We go to school to study until our brains go numb in order to get the highest grades in every subject. From there, we have the report card necessary to attend the most esteemed Ivy League, and we proceed to work twice as hard in the pursuit of a suitable degree. Once we have our diplomas, we can find a high-paying job and settle in a nice house with some nice cars and a nice yard. We're told that once we acquire all of that, we'll finally have the means to reach a state of happiness. Because if life is like a journey, this must be the destination, right? After all, this is the American dream. However, during my junior year, I learned that the so-called dream is the last thing I want. I began my junior year with a similar approach as the previous years. Study sessions still went on to the early hours of the AM, and every school day still felt eternal. It was yet another start to another long year. Once again, I was an orange being squeezed dry of its juices. Something had to change. In an attempt to make my time a little bit more tolerable, I decided to give social life a chance, and pretty soon, after-school meetups and weekend road trips with friends joined the list of my priorities. I quickly realized that strong friendships and lasting memories are as valuable as an A in class, and I began to scale back my obsession with my gradebook to make more time for friends and family. By rethinking my priorities, high school quickly went from being miserable to quite enjoyable. During my junior year, I learned that school is not a step in a ladder that leads to happiness, but instead, a fun scavenger hunt in which you're given the chance to find the people, activities, and classes that bring you the most joy. However, it's important to understand that every cherry has its pit. Long study sessions and a good amount of sacrifice will still be necessary to shape your passions into a sustainable way of living. By no means am I telling you to stop trying class because you don't like it, and being TMI, I guarantee that stress here is inescapable. However, by trying to find joy as we live through these challenges, instead of hoping for joy afterwards, we can reduce stress and create a way more valuable high school experience. There's an English philosopher by the name of Alan Watts that got this idea down pretty well. He claimed that our existence is not like a journey, but much more like music. We don't appreciate music for its ending, but rather enjoy it from start to finish. In Watts' words, when you travel, you're trying to get somewhere. But when listening to music, one doesn't make the end of the composition the point of the composition. Because if that was so, the best conductors would be those that played fastest. When we listen to our favorite song, we sing every word from beginning to end. Similarly, we should enjoy each moment of the present instead of looking toward an end in the future. When we begin to enjoy the present and create memories, our ability to manipulate time kicks in yet again. We have all heard that time flies when you're having fun, or have experienced time speeding up in moments of joy. A class spent working in a group project is faster than one listening to a lecture. Watching a tennis match takes longer than actually playing one, and no calendar will ever convince me that spring break lasts a whole 9 days. It's true that time feels faster when we're enjoying it. However, our brains have also found a way to slow down those fleeting moments of joy and excitement. The best way to demonstrate how is through a quick story from spring break of last year. Let me set the scene. The mountain air was light and crisp as I sat down looking toward a snowy slope below me. Since I was flying to snowless Texas the next day, I knew that on this last jump session, I had to go beyond my limits and just send it, without much consideration for my own safety. Once all the other snowboarders left, I was finally alone with the massive ramp sitting in front of me. Well, almost alone, as I had my cousins besides the ramp to record a video to laugh at in case I were to fall and seriously injure myself. Anyway, the ramp, staring right through my skin and soul, was daring me to properly shred its jib, or simply put, clear its jump. So I did what one does when a pile of snow challenges them, and tightened the bindings on my snowboard and started straight lining towards the jump. Without slowing down, I started to feel the surface of the ramp, pushing upward on my feet until I went over the lift and took off. Much like a departing airplane, I kept gaining more and more altitude as I traveled forward, with no signs of stopping. Below me, I saw the downslope of the landing slowly slip below my feet to expose relatively flat, compacted snow. Also not ideal. I knew a painful landing was coming, and all I could do was wait and wait and wait some more. Much like Alice falling down the rabbit hole, this jump seemed to have no end. As I flew over the snow, my nerves kept on piling up as I anticipated a disastrous end. And soon enough, the snowboard's nose made first contact with the ground, and I flinged forward into a series of flips and twists that eventually rolled me to a stop. Here's the video my cousin took. Thanks, Nat. So, that was fast, huh? What felt like an eternity in my mind actually took less than 2 seconds in reality. This jump happened during a family vacation in Tahoe. Much like every break from school, the week off went by way too fast. One moment I was taking my first steps in the snow, and the next, my steps were only bringing me closer to Coates Hall. But upon thinking back on the trip, my memories began to contradict my experiences. Instead of illustrating the trip like a quick time lapse, my vivid, detailed recollections provide an account of a long and epic vacation. I can describe the huge clouds of snow that weighed down on the pine trees. I can tell you about the steep backcountry runs in which I dodged incoming trees. I can still hear the crunch that came from sitting on the thin layer of ice that blanketed the ski lifts. Upon reflection, this trip seems to have been a very long and important part of my life. My perception slowed down the fun experiences of the trip. This proves to me that we don't just manipulate time as it passes, but also as it has passed. We have two choices when we confront any situation. We can choose to use our ability to slow down time as it passes by leaving happiness for later, which will result in a long but boring life. Or we can choose to speed up time as it passes by enjoying the moment and creating memories that will last longer than a lifetime at the DMV. The choice is ours to make.